The nation's third botched execution in 6 months has rekindled the debate over the death penalty. Arizona inmate Joseph Rudolph Wood was pronounced dead at 6:49 p.m. yesterday, 1 hour and 57 minutes after the execution began. Witnesses report him gasping for 90 minutes. The execution took so long that his lawyers had time to file an emergency appeal while it was happening. The Arizona Supreme Court also called an impromptu hearing on the matter and learned of his death during the discussions. It is the third execution gone awry this year in the U.S., including one in Ohio, in which an inmate gasped in similar fashion for nearly a half hour.
Notice that the reporter places emphasis on the unusual spike in botched, or failed, execution attempts. Although this may be hard to believe, these execution attempts were purposely botched. Because of the inhumane and barbaric execution styles, the masses will be provoked to anger. This will motivate society to seek out a better and more effective alternative. It is then that someone will come up with the brilliant idea of decapitating, or beheading, criminals. Because the head will be severed from the body immediately, death will be instantaneous. This will cause decapitation to be heavily promoted by the mainstream media as the most humane, and cost-efficient, way of putting criminals to death. The masses will follow along blindly. This will set the stage for the end-time scenario that the Bible foretells in Revelation chapter 20, in which the saints of the Most High are beheaded for their faith in Christ, and for their refusal to worship the image of the beast, aka the New World Order. As of date, this execution style has been lobbied for and approved by the United States government. But it has not yet been revealed to the public, nor has it went into effect.
The nation's third botched execution in 6 months has rekindled the debate over the death penalty. Arizona inmate Joseph Rudolph Wood was pronounced dead at 6:49 p.m. yesterday, 1 hour and 57 minutes after the execution began. Witnesses report him gasping for 90 minutes. The execution took so long that his lawyers had time to file an emergency appeal while it was happening. The Arizona Supreme Court also called an impromptu hearing on the matter and learned of his death during the discussions. It is the third execution gone awry this year in the U.S., including one in Ohio, in which an inmate gasped in similar fashion for nearly a half hour.
And finally, a U.S. federal judge has called for the return of firing squads as a method of execution following a recent string of botched lethal injections. Alex Kozinski labeled the lethal injection method as a dishonest attempt to disguise the brutal nature of capital punishment. Kozinski justifies his distaste for lethal injections, claiming the method is hampered by drug shortages. He insists that firing squads would never be troubled by a lack of guns or ammunition. The chief judge also said the guillotine is probably the best method, but seems inconsistent with national ethos. Kozinski's comments come after the botched lethal injection of Arizona.
People generally forget the mistakes of the past. Citizens who were caught up in Hitler's Nazi Germany hardly noticed the gradual development of extremism, mainly due to high emotions and dazzling propaganda. But history often repeats itself. FEMA plastic coffins, detention centres, armoured checkpoints and armoured military vehicles for civil purposes are well-documented facts, and witnesses who have worked for the United States military claim stores of guillotines located in Fort Lewis military facility. The latest revelation of Obamacare sanctions death by guillotine, code ICD 9E978. However, Obama was only following the mandate of the World Health Organization, one of the specialized agencies under the United Nations. Is the United States government getting ready for a fascist quasi-dictatorship involving forced religion? It would not be the first time that fascism and counterfeit Christianity have merged.
And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them, and I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads, or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power, but they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years.
Okay guys, Stone Guy 223 here. I'm usually not a conspiracy theorist, but coming home from a match. I'm in South Georgia, coming out of Alabama. Check this shit out. UN. Coming out of Alabama. UN trucks. These look like brand new vehicles. Not sure what the hell is going on with this, or why we got UN trucks coming out of Alabama, or at least they're Alabama truckers. No identification on them, just UN trucks. Yeah, these are definitely brand new. All the furniture's brand new on them. I wonder what the hell's up with that.
Now, there's a bill making its way through the House addressing a big controversy in Washington. On executive authority, it would require the president to enforce laws passed by Congress, signed into law, but the White House already saying President Obama, he'd veto this bill if it ever arrived on his desk. What does Republican Senator Rand Paul think about that? Fresh off a CPAC win, sir, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill. Thanks for having me.
You back this bill on the Senate side. Congress has the legal authority to sue the president. Why is this even an issue?
Well, you know, the number one question I get when I go home or when I'm out traveling around the country is, how can the president amend legislation? How can he do this without the permission of Congress? Because he seems to be writing his own laws whenever he feels like it. The problem is we can't sue him because we don't have standing in court. So the legislation that I've introduced in the Senate would actually give us standing so we could sue and say, hey, this is unconstitutional. Because right now, if we go to court against the president, they throw the case out. So we do need standing. He also does need to enforce the law. We write laws, and he's just deciding willy-nilly. If he likes it, he enforces it. If he doesn't, he won't enforce it. And we really think he needs to be chastened, rebuked, and told that he needs to obey the Constitution.
What the White House would argue is that that's executive privilege. That you have to amend amend laws, as they progress to make sure that the laws work. What do you think about that?
I don't think that's a proper understanding of the Constitution. Really, Madison wrote that if we were to allow the president to write legislation or amend legislation, that would be a form of tyranny. So no, that's not what our founding fathers intended by this. The executive is supposed to dutifully enforce the laws, and he's not supposed to cherry pick which laws he likes and which he doesn't. So I think if this can eventually make it into court, we'll win. But part of the question is, how do we get this into court?
We know the president can refuse to defend the constitutionality of a statute, even one that he signs into law. Mr. Speaker, that is a lot of power. What are we to do when that amount of power is not enough? If a president can change some laws, can he change all laws? Are there any laws under your theory that he actually has to enforce?
Wow. Very volatile, heated on the Hill yesterday. Republicans getting tired of watching President Obama sidestep the laws that they have worked to pass and put into legislation. So now we're starting to see some serious pushback on this. Yesterday, the House voted to bring their grievances over this hot-button issue to the courts, making it possible for them to sue the president. The president says, surprise, surprise, that he would veto that bill.
There is a new worry on our southern border tonight, with border agents overwhelmed by this huge recent surge in illegal immigrants. The cartels are now taking advantage.
Megan, let me just say this. What I've watched over the last few days is so problematic that what I'm about to say on your show is the most important thing I've ever said on your show. We have so many problems facing this country. We know them all, especially the major ones: joblessness, welfare, national security, so on and so on. And as I stood on that border and I watched those cartels drag over all the things they did, I went over to the bus depots and watched thousands upon thousands of illegal aliens be bussed around almost as if they were at Disneyland, being sent off to somewhere USA. All I could think was that all those major problems just became a major epidemic. Our Border Patrol, I met with the Border Patrol today. I met with them secretly. They told me the morale is down. The criminals that are coming through this country is earth-shattering. And I can tell you this, I feel that our country and the future of our children have officially fallen off the cliff.
Now a closer look at those militants tearing Iraq apart, boasting of their brutality with those images we showed you at the top. Tonight we're learning more about them and about the man who leads them. He spent years in U.S. custody.
They have a strategy, and it's working. They use social media as a weapon. Many of the images in this story come from accounts associated with ISIS and can't be verified. Leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, was in U.S. custody in Iraq for 4 years. When he was released in 2009, his parting words to U.S. troops, "I'll see you in New York."
Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton weighing in on the controversial prisoner swap of 5 Taliban leaders for Sergeant Bo Bergdahl's freedom. She was asked if the exchange was like making a deal with the devil. Here's her answer.
Did he make a deal with the devil?
If you look at what the factors were going into the decision, of course there are competing interests and values.
I'd like to say to Bo right now, who's having trouble speaking English, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Zayabayem. I'm your father, Bo. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Zayabayem. I'm your father, Bo.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting that one of the detainees whose return has already told his family that he plans on waging war on America. So what this president did is he made a deal with the devil for a deserter, a man who didn't even like America.
In the spotlight tonight, America's gun problem. Yesterday morning, a 15-year-old student opened fire at Reynolds High School in Troutdale, Oregon, injuring a teacher and killing a fellow student before turning the gun on himself.
My biggest frustration so far is the fact that this society has not been willing to take some basic steps to keep guns out of the hands of people who can do just unbelievable damage.
President Obama is rallying supporters of gay rights. He spoke at a fundraiser in New York City last night for political donors who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. He believes more needs to be done overseas.
There are still Americans out there who are vulnerable and alone and still need our support. So we can't stop. We've got to keep fighting.
The president is promising to sign an executive order ending workplace discrimination by federal contractors based on sexual orientation. That would affect 14 million employees.
I'm here to actually talk to you guys really quickly about this flag. This flag is not that old. This flag is the symbol of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer pride. So maybe all of you could help me read what it says out loud on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Who I am is what fulfills me, and what fulfills the vision I have of the world.
One high school salutatorian banned from discussing his faith in a graduation speech. He fought back this week. Take a listen.
In coming before you today, I presented 3 drafts of my speech. All of them denied on the account of my desire to share my personal thoughts and inspiration to you in my Christian faith.
It wasn't one that your school wanted you to share. You had heard 3 times that you couldn't include faith. What did the school tell you?
That's right. Now, the first and second times I submitted my speech last week, the school told me, as well as their attorneys, that any reference to God or Jesus or prayer of any kind was unconstitutional and they would pull the mic on me. Additionally, the third time I turned my speech in, they denied it and handed it back to me with God or any reference to my faith blacked out in black marker.
I mean, but look, all of those, well, some would call them threats against your freedom of speech and religion.
We're going to make sure we pay attention to this because this type of thing is happening more often than not these days, it seems. And it's a sad reality that this type of hostility has to go on.
I go anywhere Greater Cleveland calls.
43-year-old Doug Odalecki admits that he's armed when he's on the streets, but it's with a video camera. And last Friday night, he captured this run-in with police.
You're going to be cited if you don't get rid of the turn now.
Like I said, I can't get rid of it, so you got to do what you got to do.
The Parma man runs the Greater Cleveland Cop Block, which, according to Odalecki, holds police accountable for their actions. Last week, he took his camera to the corner of State and Brook Park Roads, where he held up a sign warning drivers that an OVI checkpoint was down the street. The sign said, "Checkpoint ahead, turn now." He said he's not for drunk driving. He's just against what he considers an abuse of power.
It is a Nazi-esque style checkpoint. It is a papers, please type checkpoint. These guys are not out there for your safety or anything like that, so if you think that, think again.
Our sobriety checkpoint is all about educating the public, and we need them to come through the checkpoint to educate them.
The altercation was caught on camera as Odalecki insisted he had a right to warn drivers. According to state law, the police have to alert the public a few days before a checkpoint's set up. But in this case, they didn't like that he was telling drivers to, quote, turn now.
So why is this thought to be a good idea to actually bring these high caliber weapons into U.S. streets?
I don't think it's a good idea. High caliber weapons are extremely dangerous. This type of velocity is not necessary. I spent 24 years in the Philadelphia Police Department. I am fearful of this type of police chief getting this type of equipment.
Welcome to the news at 9, and we start with breaking news. A scare for commuters in Weehawken after a threat near the Lincoln Tunnel.
Transformed Weehawken into an armed camp. Authorities swarmed the streets with heavy weapons, rifles drawn, canine units making sweeps. Police shut down 19th Street, not far from the Lincoln Tunnel. Police even ordered some passengers off this Hudson Bergen light rail train. Many people seem stunned and visibly upset by the huge show of force.
I did see an Army vehicle going by, and, there were a lot of helicopters.
Police say the caller also said he had a gun and various chemicals. Authorities pinged or traced the call.
Well, a man accused of setting off a manhunt on the seacoast following a violent confrontation with police.
No one was hit by the gunfire. And backup arrived from across the region, including federal agents. Sections of routes 150 and 107 were shut down. A helicopter searched the wooded area overhead. An unsettling scene for people living here.
It's scary because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who the person is.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
All right, folks, there's a lot going on right now. Decisions being made that are unprecedented and will have an overreaching impact on what it means to live in the United States of America. Both the Senate and the House of Representatives have just overwhelmingly passed the National Defense Authorization Act. Squeezed into this military funding bill are two provisions that give the military not just lots and lots of money, but lots and lots of power as well.
A new generation of surveillance drones could soon be watching us all. The Federal Aviation Administration is expected to announce plans to expand the use of domestic drones in American airspace.
Well, get ready to look up at the sky and see drones hovering above. As of now, unmanned aircraft could only be used by military airspace and by certain law enforcement agencies. But this week, Congress passed a bill that would allow for commercial and private use of the drones.
I have two words for you: predator drones. You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?
We're shopping and dining over Thanksgiving and maybe watching some football games. Big government Republicans and Democrats were busy shredding the last vestiges of the Constitution. Senators John McCain and Carl Levin want to enact a law that would declare the entire United States of America a battlefield for the military. They're talking about inserting the Army into domestic law enforcement. Senator Lindsey Graham, who supports this bill, says, quote, "The homeland is part of the battlefield, and people can be held without trial, whether an American citizen or not."
The Department of Homeland Security buying ammunition, now looking to purchase another 21 million rounds of ammunition. This in addition, of course, to the 1.6 billion rounds that Homeland Security has bought in just the past 10 months. Now, to put all of this in perspective, the military used approximately 70 million rounds each year of the Iraq War. 70 million rounds in a war.
If you look at what the Department of Homeland Security has been purchasing over the last year, it comes out to like 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition, more than 7,000 fully automatic assault weapons, 2,700 MRAP type vehicles, and now drones. Those are instruments of war. Department of Homeland Security's, who are they going to fight a war against?
Something happened.
Robert Whitaker, the Tactical Supervisor for El Paso SRT for Homeland Security Investigations. Well, we have our big vehicle out here. It's an armored vehicle. It's an MRAP vehicle. It's mine resistant, ambush protected. That's what it stands for. This is what we use to deliver our team to high-risk warrant services.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
Important breaking news out of Boston: a pair of bombings rocked the finish line at the historic Boston Marathon.
It was never meant that we would have this gigantic police force from the federal government. I mean, we had martial law up there, FBI and all these agents coming in, closing things down, going to people's houses. Do we close down cities because there's 10 murders over the weekend in Chicago? We don't do that. But here we close down a whole city, not even allowed to go to a baseball game. I mean, I think it's very, very scary when I look at some of those pictures.
The military likes to perform war games, so that's why we're seeing military on the streets practicing. They are actually practicing. The tanks that we see on the streets and the National Guard patrolling neighborhoods and the practices that they're doing with our local police department, this is all in preparation for martial law, so that when they do actually lock down the country, they've got everything secured.
But I think what we're starting to see, for anybody who is objective at all, is we're seeing a totalitarian system now unveil itself. And ever since essentially 9/11 happened, it's been more and more of these draconian measures that are leading us right down the road to martial law.
Particularly to hear President Obama claim the power to keep people in prison indefinitely with no charges against them, no conviction, no sentence, just imprisonment. It's particularly stunning to hear him make that claim in the middle of a speech that was all about the rule of law.
This last week, the U.S. Congress passed a bill which repeals classic comitatus, which means that we have now institutionalized and codified martial law. Right now, the battle against terrorism involves all of us. Everybody in this country is a potential terrorist.
We don't even understand freedom anymore. We are a country that is headed towards socialism, totalitarianism, beyond your wildest imagination. I have to tell you, I'm doing a story tonight that I wanted to debunk these FEMA camps. I'm tired of hearing, you know about them? Sure. I'm tired of hearing it. I wanted to debunk them. Well, we've now for several days done research on them. I can't debunk them. I don't know anything about it. It is our government. If you trust our government, it's fine. If you have any kind of fear that we might be headed towards a totalitarian state, look out, buckle up. There's something going on in our country that is ain't good.
And they find a little red dot or a little blue dot on their mailbox, and they wonder what the little red dot and blue dot is. Well, it's marking your mailbox by the government, so when foreign troops come in here on us after martial law, but if you have a blue dot, they take you to the FEMA camps being built by Halliburton right now to house 50 million Americans Americans. They're building enough concentration camps in America by Halliburton. So I'm going to tell all of you, if you have not bought ammunition, if you have not bought guns, go get them now. Go get them now, because you won't be able to get them much longer.
Change has come to America.
Practice Christianity and you could be court-martialed. That could be the new law of the land for our armed forces, thanks to a proposal by a religious tolerance group that claims Christian evangelists are predators.
Is a war on religious liberty within the military, and that the Christianity of service members is now coming under attack by the Obama administration.
These two workers have microchips?
Right. Well, this is very, very real, and these microchips are about the size of a grain of rice. They get injected into your skin.
Futuristic film. Humans injected with a tiny chip holding the key to all of their private information.
But as you're about to see in our CBS 46 investigation, it's not fiction. In fact, it's being marketed in Georgia as life-saving technology. Life-saving technology.
We have a Florida family who are really pioneers of the brave new world. They have volunteered to be the first ever to have microchip identification devices implanted into their body.
It is the first implantable microchip for humans that has multiple security, financial, and healthcare applications.
One thing I would just suggest, I'm just an outside soon-to-be investor. I love this idea, by the way, Scott. I think this...
The Northside Independent School District in San Antonio has put tracking chips in the ID badges for more than 4,000 high school students.
Well, it looks and sounds like something out of the future, but a new palm scanning device will help Bossier Parish schools keep better track of what children are eating now. The electronic device will be implemented at all Bossier Parish schools.
Now we're seeing a complete totalitarian takeover of the United States of America. Now we've been talking about this for years now. This is the police state. This is the police state. This is what a total breakdown of our society looks like. But we're seeing all of this intensify. This is all intensifying around the Second Amendment. Should we be able to own guns or not? Let's take guns away from the people. These are very big, very hardcore issues.
No matter what your purpose is, you must leave. If you do not disperse, you may be arrested and or subject to other police action. The use of riot control agents and or less lethal munitions, which could cause risk of injury to those who...
Wall of police now moving in.
American, every person on the United States soil or international soil can be deemed as a terrorist. If they have really any reason to want to detain you, they don't need to acknowledge your Fourth Amendment rights.
It's what supported things like the Patriot Act and now the NDAA and the ever-encroaching police state.
By order of the City of Pittsburgh Chief Police, I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly. I order all those assembled to immediately disperse. You must leave the immediate vicinity.
Urban military training exercises are becoming an increasingly common sight in many U.S. cities. The Department of Homeland Security has spent the past year acquiring more than 1 billion rounds of high-performance ammunition. Do these developments suggest concerns over a potential terrorist attack? Are they preparations for widespread social upheaval? Is there perhaps something even more sinister underway? As an insider at the Department of Homeland Security who described urban warfare training as, quote, desensitizing exercises all across the U.S., adding that, quote, we're being prepared for mass civil unrest in major U.S. cities. DoD will be expected to help.
Ephesians 6:10-13. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord, and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand.